Hi there, Shanna Kramer here. This is Christmas Americana. We'll be covering the entire background with a brushy brushstrokey burnt umber. The burnt umber that we're going to be using is going to be a wash, so very thin, and it'll be brushed around the background to give it that sort of Americana feel. And the brown that we're adding is going to show through all subsequent layers, so it's going to help unify our color palette and give it that Americana feel. We aren't going to wait for this layer to dry. We're just going to put the brown down and then we're going to move on to some of our other colors. In the sky, we're going to want to add a little bit of white, and I'm just brushing some white right over the top of the background here. Once we get about halfway down the canvas, then we'll start adding a hill. So now I'm just going to start moving the brush in a hill motion, adding a little bit of black to gray out the white. We get some depth in our background there. We're just adding a little bit of a hill for our row of trees to sit on top of. You might see through that window of the truck, so go ahead and fill that in the same color as the sky. As long as we have this light gray in our brush, we'll go ahead and fill in the bumper. And we're just filling this in with paint. We'll add our shapes and details to the bumper later. This is all still second layer, so we're just moving on. Now we're going to add our row of trees on top of that little hill in the background. Our trees are going to be about a medium gray, a little bit of white, a little bit of black. Take that flat, small brush and just add in a few tree trunks. Then using the edge of your brush, just tap in some dashes. And those dashes are going to be your tree branches. Pine trees in the distance are about as easy as it gets. Just a little dot, 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 and you're done. Do that a few more times. I mean, for a few more trees, we'll fill in the whole row. If these turn out too dark or too detailed, you'll just come back over with a little bit of white and blend them out a little bit. We don't want them to appear to be too detailed simply because they are background trees. It's just filler. It's not the main subject matter. We just want them to sit quietly in the background and behave themselves. So don't add too much detail to these trees. There we are. We'll blend it out into the ground, add some shadow onto the truck. Rinse your brush really well. We're still using that same small flat brush and this quinacridone red paint. We're filling in the entire truck. Everything that's red on the truck is going to get filled in with this red paint. We'll not worry about the details. Those are going to get filled in later. We just want to add our background color. So go ahead and fill in the whole truck. There are a few areas that I'm not as concerned about, like where the tree is going to go, and we'll cover those up with a big black tree, so it won't matter anyway. Once you've got your red layer on, then you'll go ahead and add some shadows to that truck. Mix some black in with your red and put that down along the bumper of the truck, along the wheel well of the truck. Put the color down and then just go ahead and blend it in a little bit with your brush if it needs blending. Most of the time, just putting the color down is good. Don't mess around with it too much. We've got our shapes on the back of the truck. We've got those ledges. It's a two-step indent, so we're just going to just fill in a little bit of the ledges, the shadows underneath them. Don't forget the shadows under the window. If these aren't dark enough and you need to come back and do a second layer later, that is no problem. Easy enough to do. We just want to make sure that we have all of our shapes in place and our values in place as quickly as possible. When we add the highlights to the truck, we're just going to pick up some white and just put it right over the top of the red. The highlights are going to be done in multiple layers. This is just the first layer of highlights. What we're doing here is brightening up the red. It may turn into kind of a strange shade of pink or light red at this point, and that's just fine. We just want to add bright areas, and we'll come back over these later on with a solid red and put it over the top. Since we're using a transparent red, this light color that we're adding right now will show through and will appear as a light area of the truck later on. Highlights complete, we'll move on to the tree. At this point, I've switched paintbrushes and I'm now using a dagger striper for the first time. It takes a few minutes to get used to the brush. Once I start getting used to it, then I start to like this brush, and it works really, really well for things like tree branches. So go ahead and do the outside shape of your tree first. You always want to define your outline, your shapes. Think about your negative space, which is the space outside of your tree, and make it an interesting shape right from the start before you go filling in the center. If you start with the center, it's just way too easy to end up with a cotton ball tree or a triangle or some other non-tree tree shape. Once the outside is complete, fill it in. In this case, I'm not taking time to fill it in solidly, which is turning out nice. You can kind of see sort of a shape to the tree. It gives it a little bit more depth and a little bit more fuzzy, fluffy branches that you might not get otherwise if you fill it in solid. Once the tree is on, it looks like the shadow areas of the truck just aren't defined enough. So I'm just coming back in with a little bit of dark red again, more black this time mixed in the red, and just really punching up those shadows. Once we complete the shadows, we'll come back in with a solid red paint and paint over the top of those white highlights. Switching back to the small brush, we'll take a gray and go over that bumper one more time. Here's where we can define the shape of the bumper, darken it up a little bit, and refine that outside edge of the bumper. I think it got a little bit wobbly shaped when we were adding our reds to our truck, so this is the opportunity to just adjust the shape of the bumper and just make some corrections. On to the highlights. At this point, I'm just looking for excuses to use the dagger striper. I liked it so much. So I have some snow on the trees that I'll be adding, and of course I'm going to use my new favorite brush for that. When you're painting snow on pine trees, one thing that you want to keep in mind is that trees have branches. Seems obvious, I know, but when you're painting your trees, think about how those branches are laying. There's gaps in between each of them, and then put the snow on top of only the branches. Make sure you leave the gaps. If you do fill in a little too much snow on your branches, you can always come back later with black and just kind of add in a little bit of space between the snow. Just make sure it has a little bit of depth. That way your branches will actually appear to be more branchy. While I have this brush, I'm going to add a star to the top of my tree. In this case, I'm just adding the background of that star, just making that white a little bit more dense so it stands out against the background. I'll add a little bit more color to it as well, but for now I just want to add the shape of that star. Switching to the smaller flat brush, I can get a little bit crisper edges with this brush. And so I'm just adding in the brown outline to the star. Now it's kind of a stark star that doesn't really match the rest of the painting. So I'll take my teeny tiny little brush and some light gray and just go ahead and fill in some of the shadows on that star. Make it whole thing just appear a little bit more 3D overall. A few darks, a few highlights. Star complete, we'll move on to our highlights. This time, these are the bright sunshiny reflection highlights, so we want these to be a pure white. Go ahead and mix up a slightly thinned out white, add a little bit of water to it, pick up some of that white on the brush and just drop it right exactly where you want it. This white is definitely better if you don't mix it around and try to blend it in and make it perfect. One stroke, done, and don't mess with it. And let it be. At this point, we've got ourselves a nice, happy little Christmas tree painting in the back of a truck. And I hope you've enjoyed it. If you're watching this on YouTube, like, subscribe, ring the bell. You'll be notified when we have new videos. If you're watching this on Patreon, then you're going to have the downloads available of the written instructions as well as a traceable for the class. I hope you enjoy what you see, and do give me a comment. I'd love to hear from you. Thanks for watching.